Very good morning, dear children. We were at our second chapter of history, New Kings and Kingdoms, and we discussed about the new dynasties which were, there in the 12th century. And we discussed that in the 12th century, the kings they used to have their samantas, and after that, the samantas, when they gained power and wealth, they declared themselves as independent from the king. And we saw two examples, one of Rashtrakutan chief Tanti Durga, and the other examples we have seen of Kadamba Mayura Sharman, Gujara Pratihara Harish Chandra. After that, we discussed how they were administering their kingdoms. They used to they used to call up high sounding titles, and they used to share their power, their responsibilities with the samantas, peasants, traders, brahmins, and whatever resources were, there in the state, they were obtained from the producers. Sometimes they used to pursue them, sometimes they were compelled to surrender a part of their produce as a rent. Then we discussed different type of taxes. The main taxes were Veti and Kadamai, and we discussed that all the resources, which the uh, king was getting, he was using it to make establishment, construction of temples, forts, and all that. Fine. After that, children, comes the prashastis and land grants. Fine. Now, as we have done earlier also in the class sixth also, what were the prashastis? They were written in praise of. The king used to tell his poets or poets to write something about himself, and most often, children, the prashastis were literally not true, because they were, you know, told by the king to write. So king will obviously exaggerate the things, and in return, the writer, whoever is writing the prashasti, he is going to get reward for that. So obviously, they are going to write in an exaggerated manner. So they were written by the Brahmins, and they all the learned Brahmins, they used to write these prashastis. Fine. And they were helping in the administration also, the Brahmins. And whenever the Brahmins were writing the prashastis, children, they were getting land grants, and you can see the copper plates down. So all the land grants, they were recorded on the copper plates. Fine. So this person has got this land grant from here to here. Everything was recorded on these copper plates, children. Fine. Now, if you talk about the 12th century, we come across a long Sanskrit poem, and it was written about the history of kings who ruled Kashmir. But it is totally different from the Prashastis. It was composed by an author. What was the name of the author? Kulhana. But when Kulhana was writing this poem about the history of kings who ruled over Kashmir, he consulted a variety of sources. All the inscriptions he consulted, documents, he talked to the eyewitnesses also, their accounts also, earlier histories he consulted, and then he wrote the account. It was totally different from the writers of Prashastis, as this author, which author Kulhana, he wrote it in a very critical, he was very critical about the rulers and their policies. He had a detailed information about them, and then only he wrote the poem. Fine. So after that comes the warfare for wealth. Now, obviously, children, in the very first map, we have seen that the dynasties, they have fluctuating borders, means their borders were not fixed. Why? Because, children, obviously, they are fighting with one another to get control over their areas, certain areas. Now, all the ruling dynasties, they have their own specific region, but at the same time they were trying to control each other's areas. So one particular area for which these three dynasties were fighting was the city of Kannauj in the Ganga Valley. For centuries, children, Gujara Pratiharas, Rashtrakutas, Palas, which you saw in map 1, they were fighting to get control over Kannauj. So what was so important in Kannauj that they were fighting? Because it was a very fertile area. Lot of rivers were going from that area. It was very fertile. If the area is fertile, agriculture will be good. Agriculture will be good. Produce will be good. If the produce will be good, they will get more money and all. So they just wanted to get control over Kannauj. So for centuries, all these three dynasties, Gujara Pratiharas, Rashtrakutas and Palas, they were fighting to get control over Kannauj. And because these were the three parties which were there in the conflict, so historians, they describe this struggle as a tripartite struggle. Fine. Now uh, all the rulers, children, they tried to demonstrate their power and resources by building large temples. Fine. So whenever someone was attacking on one another's kingdom, they were targeting the temples because the temples were extremely rich that time. So they were looting the temples. Fine. Now, one such best known ruler is the Sultan Muhammad of Ghazni from Afghanistan. He ruled from 1997 to 1030, and he had control over Central Asia, Iran, northwestern part of the subcontinent. But he used to come to our subcontinent every year, and he used to target all the temples, the wealthy temples. Even he included Somnath temple of Gujarat also. And he used to carry away all the wealth from here, and the wealth he was using to make the splendid city of Ghazni. Fine. Sultan, this Muhammad of Ghazni, he was very interested in finding about the people he conquered. He wanted to know about, he wanted an account of all these things. So he told a scholar named as Al-Biruni to write the account of all the subcontinent, find who people were there. This Arabic work was known as Kitab al-Hind, and it is still a very important source for the history. And he also consulted the Sanskrit scholars also to prepare this account for the subcontinent. Fine. Other kings were also engaged in the warfare, like the Chahmanas, which were afterwards they were called Chauhans, and their region was from Delhi and Ajmer, but they were always trying to control over the west and the east, and they were opposed by the Chalukyas of Gujarat and Gahadwalas in the western Uttar Pradesh. The best known Chahmana ruler was Prithviraj III, and Prithviraj III defeated the Afghan ruler Muhammad of Ghori. But the very next year, he lost the battle with Muhammad Ghori in 1192. Fine, children. So, this was all about the warfare for wealth. Now we will, in the next module, we will continue with a topic, a closer look, the Cholas. We are going to study about the Cholas in detail, children. Okay, thank you and have a nice day.